Girls, Jason.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you for joining us. My name is Elijah Bonyo from World Vision Kenya. I hope you can hear me. And just to be sure you can hear me, can I confirm with John and James, if you can hear me?
Clearly.
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. So welcome to our webinar this afternoon. We are happy to have James Muraguri to join us and John Kinuthia. And already we have 17 participants, so we hope that other participants will be able to join as we continue. We also live streaming this on Facebook, and we hope that those who are not able to join through Zoom will be able to join and follow this on Facebook. We'll also be recording this conversation. It's going to be a 1-hour conversation, and the recording is for purpose of enabling us to listen to the version recorded later on and able to share with those who might not be able to join us this afternoon. Just some basic rules. We'd like to encourage you to listen as much as possible. You can type your questions or comments on the chat box. In case you need to raise your voice or to be heard, please raise your hand up, and then we'll be able to unmute you and you'll be given a chance to speak. So we'll moderate this session with Jennifer and allow Jennifer just 1 minute to introduce herself. Jennifer, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are hoping to have a fruitful conversation on budgeting for children. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me allow James Muraguri to introduce himself, and then John. Go ahead, James.
Thank you very much, Arija, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all our participants participating in this webinar. My name is James Muraguri, Chief Executive Officer at the Institute of Public Finance Kenya, and I'm glad to join in this conversation. The Institute of Public Finance Kenya is a non-profit think tank that works to advance the ideals of open public finance management for investments in socio sectors, and we look at unquestionable evidence for policy and action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. John, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Don. My name is John Kinuthia. I'm a Senior Program Officer with the International Budget Partnership Kenya. IBP, as we call it in short, is a non-governmental organization as well. And our focus is really making sure that citizens and civil society organizations can actually engage with government budgets at national level and at the county level. So we're in the right conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James and John, and welcome everyone. To begin our conversation this afternoon, we want to ask James. James, we'd like to begin with you for about 10 minutes. Please share with us your experience on how we can engage in influencing budget implementation. As you're aware, the government of Kenya and national government and county governments are already implementing the budget for the financial year 2021 and 2022. And just share with us how the civil society will be able to engage in influencing budget implementation. What are the entry points? What do we need to do? What are the challenges we are likely to face, and how do you overcome the challenges? Over to you, James. Kindly unmute, James.
Sorry, and thank you very much, Arija. And to start off this conversation, I would like to note that participation in the budget process, and more so implementation, is not just a question, of state agencies. It's a conversation for all stakeholders. Over the last few years, Kenya has continued to improve on its transparency scores with regards to accessibility of budget information. But transparency alone is not sufficient for improving governance. Now, for us who are in the space, and we've been tracking government with regards to public participation across implementation, The Open Budgets Survey, which is an independent analysis of government budgets across 120 countries, indicates that for 2019, Kenya scored 0 out of 100 in implementation with regards to public participation. When we scored 50% on transparency and 50 on oversight, we scored 0 with regards to implementation. But opportunities exist for civil society organizations, especially child-focused organizations, with regards to engagement on budgeting. And I would like to pick it up from where we are. We are now currently on the 3rd month. September is the 3rd month of the financial year 2021-2022. So implementation is already rolling for programs for this financial year. What are opportunities for civil society organizations working towards engaging in the budget process? First of all, let me say that you don't have to wait for national treasury or county treasuries to call for participation. The time to engage is now. And at the national level, we need to engage with the Social Protection Department, which is responsible for child programming in Kenya. At the county level, you have respective departments responsible for early childhood education and village polytechnics, as mentioned by the Constitution. That's our target, audience with regards to supply side of budget resources, while we are the demand side as civil society organizations working on that space. Now, in this period also for implementation, we would want to look at what are key documents, for example, we want to be keen on looking so that we can be able to interact with this process, the implementation process. And we are keenly and specifically looking at the implementation process. And this implementation process is running between July 2021 and June 2022. Those 12 months of implementation are key months for us to look at. So in that period, there would be quarterly budget implementation reports released by the Office of the Controller of Budget. Now, these quarterly budget implementation reports are key documents that can tell us whether there's any expenditure happening or not. Because the conversation is not just about allocation. The bigger picture is in spending. Are we spending resources in what needs to be done? The budget implementation reports, quarterly budget implementation reports are critical documents. And of course, the quarterly economic and budgetary review released by the National Treasury. That one will tell us where resources are going at the national level. And of course, there's also an opportunity for us to engage. Once we get those documents, we have an opportunity to engage with the parliamentary committee responsible for child programming and child budgeting. Because then we can ask them very difficult questions and tell them the report says this, nothing is happening, and the budget says this, because all these documents have to speak to each other. So that's one thing. The other key document that I would like people to be keen on, on the how and the when we can engage, is on the monthly exchequer releases. The monthly exchequer releases, which are published around between 15th and 20th of every month by the National Treasury, indicates where money has been released to go. So you might be told that agents are saying, oh, we don't have resources, but you need to verify that actually the exchequer release for the previous month says money was released to go and serve, like the Social Protection Department with regard, to service delivery. So that is the way I would want to look at that, those two perspectives, Don. Thank you very much, Erija.
Thank you very much, John. And maybe just a comment from your end. Are you able to comment on access to government budget documents? You have mentioned several documents that the civil society need to be able to access and maybe review. In your opinion, are these budget documents readily accessible to the public?
Thank you, Erija. With regards to accessibility, one of the biggest challenges we have with regards to budget tracking, and especially for those who are working on child-focused budgeting, you realize that the biggest challenge you encounter is access to these budget informations. But we also have an opportunity to use Access to Information Act and working closely with the Office of Commission for Administrative of Justice. In case you're finding challenges, then you're able to write according to the ATI, Access to Information Act, keeping in copy the Office of the Ombudsman, or the Commission for Administrative Justice, and ensuring that this conversation works. But we are also very lucky at this particular point, under the work that currently being coordinated by the International Budget Partnership on county budget transparency. We've seen counties putting up more information. So we are working as partners to ensure that much more information is made publicly available for use. It doesn't have to take you, to know someone at a government office for you to get access to this information. It is important to consider that this information, it's required by our constitution to be publicly available, especially information regarding public finances. This should be publicly available. Also, we've seen the National Treasury continuously increase information with regards to public finances. So we are, and that's why I mentioned transparency. While we are calling at 50% on transparency, we are calling zero with regards to participation. Our participation is not appreciated as citizens. And that's a conversation that we are taking forward with the, with the Treasury, with counties, and through the advocacy work that we are taking on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James Muraguri from the Institute of Public Finance. The colleagues on call, James is reminding us that for us to be able to engage in budget implementation, we have to access critical government information around the annual work plans, annual government budget. We are supposed to look at the budget quarterly implementation reports and a number of documents. So allow me now to welcome John Kinuthia from the International Budget Partnership. John, aware that the budget formulation has already begun for the next financial year, that is financial year 2022-2023, can you share with us on the opportunities available for the civil society to engage, especially child-focused civil society organizations? How can we be able to engage with right institutions to ensure that the budget is child-focused and that children's rights are prioritized? Over to you, John.
Thanks, Elijah. I think, and I'll pick up from something that James said. I think when you're thinking about what's the right time to engage and what we can engage with at this point, is you really want to start by knowing that there is not one right time to engage with the budget. I say that because I know for a long time in this country we've associated budgets with when the minister goes to read the budget in Parliament. By then, so many decisions have been made, and often we get to ask for the right things, but at the wrong time in the process. So, for me, I think the starting premise is the fact that there are so many key budget decisions that are made throughout the budget cycle, and for us as practitioners in the space, what we should try and do is to engage with each of those key decision points, because the decision being made at those different points also vary. It's not the same decision that is made at every point. And number two is the actors that are involved are also different. So not everything is done by the Treasury and the line ministries. Some of these decisions, all of the budget decisions are actually approved by politicians who are in Parliament. So our engagement has to keep in focus that we have those two issues that we have to keep in mind. Engage as much as possible throughout the budget cycle, and number two, try as much as possible to also engage with the different actors that have an influence throughout the process. Now, for 2022-2023 is a bit of a special year. I'll avoid calling it an abnormal year. It's a bit of a special year because of elections. And so our budget calendar for 2022-2023 is a bit adjusted so that by the time politicians get into full campaign mode, at least the important decisions that need to be made regarding the budget will already be made. So what that means is that some of the decisions that normally are made, in February of the next year will actually happen before December of this year. So that's something I think that is important to keep in mind. And I should say at this point, in the chat, I'll also just drop links to where the revised calendar is. So what are the opportunities? The first one is for us, especially as practitioners in a space that is very specialized. We are looking at children's rights. We are looking at how budgets are trying to actualize the rights of children. Then there's a sector conversation that we want to be part of. So every year, different sectors. So we have 10 sectors at the national level. At the county level, depending on which county you are in, it might vary. At the national level, we have 10 sectors. And so each of those 10 sectors get to sit and talk through what priorities they want to implement in the next financial year. And at the end of it, get to an agreement of what are the resource requirements that they want to make to the national treasury, or at least to the government. And so that's the first opportunity. And that is actually happening right now. Between now and some point on the 8th, of October, the sector conversations are happening at this point. So the first thing that we need to do, if you ask me actually as an outcome from this meeting, is whether those of us who are in this conversation can actually sit, talk through the priorities that we care about, that we think are important for government to plan for and allocate resources to, and make sure we try and influence the conversations that are happening in those sector hearings right now. If any of us, in this conversation today are part of, or they've been invited to those conversations, then it will be good to know, because that's one space that you can influence right now, because the conversations are going on at this point. Then after that is done, there is the conversation that we like calling the sector hearings. So the sector hearings is when these sector conversations are done, the different sectors then will invite the whole public to come in and listen to the priorities they are proposing and ask if you have any questions or clarifications. And that will be happening at some point in mid of October. So that's another opportunity to keep in mind. The one thing I should put a caution here is that those sector hearings are usually very brief. If you asked me, and I'm sure some of those like Bonyo who have engaged in this space, is really not much discussion happens then. And that's the reason you want to target the point when those reports are being prepared, not just when they'll be brought up to the public for literally a question and answer session. Then after that, then we'll of course have the budget policy statement. The budget policy statement is really where the government gets to put together its key priorities for the coming financial year, and then deciding what resources will be allocated to all the 10 sectors, as I mentioned, and the process is closed then. Now, let me explain why that is really important. If you want some money to be moved from the infrastructure sector, or you want some money moved from energy, and be brought to more child-focused sectors, then the budget policy statement is where that decision is made. It's not made when the minister comes to Parliament in June of next year. And so if we want to have more resources that can be used to fund the priorities that we care about within the sectors that are very child-focused, then the right time to engage is right now, and at the point when the budget policy statement is actually passed. In a normal year, that is usually between sometime in October to some point at the end of February. Now, because of the special year, as I mentioned, due to elections, that is going now to shift, because all those decisions will be made this year. So I think that's the first thing to be able to say about the opportunities that exist at this point for 2022-2023. And I think there is an opportunity there to be able to engage. Remember, this conversation will be bouncing between the executive and Parliament. So it is the executive that puts together the budget policy statement, but is Parliament that actually approves it. So if you have inroads and connections and conversations with the committees within Parliament that play a role in this, then you also want to be engaging with them. The key thing to keep in mind here is that you want to be able to generate the evidence you need for those engagements. I think one of the things we've learned a lot about government and engaging with government agencies from a budget perspective is the value of having your evidence about what the historical expenditure lines have looked like, what the performance in terms of achievements when it comes to allocations that have been made previously is, where the gaps are, where the challenges are, because that conversation really gets them to see it's not a sometimes they assume NGOs and CSOs are just there to cause chaos. But in the real sense, having that kind of very solid evidence that you can present as a conversation starter, as a reason as to why you're making certain requests, then that becomes a very useful bit. And organizations like International Budget Partnership Kenya and the Institute of Public Finance, our main role, we are not sector experts per se, but our main role is to make sure that if there are civil society organizations trying to engage with budgets, what is the best way to help them kind of build their capacity to generate that budget evidence and be able to get into those conversations. I stop there for now. Bonyo, over to you.
Thank you very much, John and James. Very interesting conversation going on here. And two things that are critical. That yes, we may be passionate around engagement in budget formulation, but we can't forget budget implementation. So as we are implementing the budget, we also have an opportunity to influence the next budget. And as you rightfully say, that unless we engage within the right sectors, engagement at public hearing might be too late. So I'm aware that in the sector working groups, normally there's what we call the performance review, program performance review. And program performance review goes together with expenditure review. So there are colleagues on call who are asking, how can we be able to access the details around the budget specific to a particular sector, especially budget for children's rights? So yes, the National Treasury has uploaded the budget on its website, but how do you narrow down to the sector or departmental specific budget for someone to know how much money do you have for education, how much money do you have for child protection, how much money do you have for at national and county level? And secondly, when do you know that money has left National Treasury to the right department? Sometimes people hear terminologies around consolidated fund, the role of the control of budget. So then people hear cash flow projections, they hear procurement plans. So please, we want to request John and James, being the experts from the right institutions that are providing technical assistance to civil society on budgeting, please help us, the colleagues on call, to understand how do you access the right information on how much money has been allocated for what in a particular department. And two, how will you be able to know that that department has actually received the money? And three, how do you track the utilization of that resource? And now that you say that the sector working groups are already engaging now, and the window of opportunity is closing in the next 2 weeks, what exactly can we do as civil society organization? So maybe James, you can go first in 3 minutes, and you have John in 3 minutes. Over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Arija, and I'm glad I'm having this conversation with John, and amazing questions coming through. So first of all, with regards to how you can know the documents to use, let's understand that there is no document in the budget process that works in isolation. There's no one document that you can use and say, this is the information I have. So, for example, if you want the budget that has been approved, you want to understand the source of that data, you have to go backward and look at the sector reports. So first of all, if you see a problem-based budget at the national level, which has details, of the social protection department with the programs, because the social protection sector has sports, has many things, you'll find them as, drilled down that way. Then you have to go down and go to the budget policy statement that sets the amount of money to be sent in that. Then from the budget policy statement, and remember, we are going backwards. So we have seen the program-based budget. It comes out in April, end of April, early May. Then in February, there is a budget policy statement that informs the figures that will be in that. And then there is a bigger drill down document you can use, which is the sector working group report. Now, the sector working group report is the one that has the demands from the sector. It stipulates all the resources that the sector wants to be provided to. But then the budget policy statement caps the ceilings. It provides the envelope and says, as a country, we have this much money. So we can only afford this much. That feedback is given back to the department to be able to align their planning. So you want to look at those documents in that way, that there is no single document that will give you the information you're looking for. You have to use all those documents to work on. Now, Now, we also have to understand the sources of our money as a country. All the taxes that we pay, the VAT, the fuel taxes, the fuel levy, the railway levy, all of them go to what we call the consolidated fund. And that consolidated fund is what is received on our behalf. And then our constitution obligates us to, first of all, charge from that money critical components like debt, national obligations, public debt, we pay off first. Then we pay pensions and other national obligations. And then we allocate the rest of the resources. Now, from the consolidated fund, the money, for example, for counties moves to the county revenue fund. Now, for money to move within that, then the controller of budget makes that decision. And that's a process at which the controller of budget reports the budget implementation. Like now we are tracking implementation. After end of September, the controller of budget has between 30 and 45 days to make public the first quarter report. In her report, we will see the amount of money she authorized for release from the consolidated fund to the county revenue fund, and from county revenue fund to actual expenditures. That's the way we track. We track that level of information. And I think it's important for people to understand those processes and the institutions that are there. Allow me to pass it on to John to pick it up on that. Thank you very much.
Yes, John, go ahead, John.
Thanks, Elijah. So that's some good questions there. So how do we know where the money is allocated? I think James has spoken to the different documents you can look at. And I think one thing I should add here is that when you're engaging throughout the budget cycle, as I encouraged, you realize it becomes much easier to answer that question, because you'll be moving all the way from the point of what the resource requirement the sector is putting forth for funding, all the way to how much money is actually approved during the program-based budgets, our budget estimates, when they are approved after the famous briefcase comes to Parliament at the end of June. Is at the end of June, then you get to know how much money has actually been approved for the sector. And it's broken down further, so it's not just at the sector level. I don't know if I'm able to share my screen, not yet, because I wanted to show what that looks like. But that's the first thing. So you want to look at the program-based budgets. Things are broken down by programs and then by sub-programs. And so it's easy to be able to see how much money is allocated to the different programs that you might be interested in. But more importantly is that our budgets have now moved beyond allocations. We are no longer just speaking about how much money a department needs to keep running. You know, that used to be a big challenge before 2012 when we decided to change a bit of our budget. Because the question was just, how do you keep the Children's Services Department running? If you looked at the budgets then, the breakdown was really just by salaries, vehicles to be purchased. James might laugh at this, but it used to have things like lubricants that are needed to take care of the cars, printers and printing papers. Really, it never told you what that department is supposed to be doing. But now...
John, you can go ahead and share, if you can share your screen on what you were saying for colleagues just to see exactly.
All right, thank you. I can see it now. All right. So the arrangement, which is what I've shared, and I'll show two parts. So one is here, as you can see, this is from the State Department for Social Protection, Pensions, and Senior Citizen Affairs. And what you notice, what is in bold are the programs and how much is allocated to those programs. This is from a supplementary budget, which is a separate conversation altogether, but I'll explain it. And you can see that there are sub-programs that then make up the program. So in the approved budget that is passed by the end of June, then you will be able to get this level of breakdown that tells you, okay, so how much money were you asking for? We're asking for 10 billion shillings. How much were we actually allocated that was approved in Parliament? It is 8 billion shillings, right? So that then gives you an idea of how much money is coming. So for example, you can see in this case, line number 3, which is Child Community Support Services, had an approved budget of 2.5 billion shillings, right? So the level of breakdown in this is much better than what you would find in some of the documents that are dealing with just broad sector conversation. But as I say, one thing, it's not organized in departments, it's organized in programs. So it's no longer just a question of, oh, you know, that department If the programs that are being run for children's services don't necessarily need some programs, then those programs can get defunded, and I put that in quotes. But it's no longer just a question about keeping certain departments alive. It's about programs that need to be implemented in government, and then how much money do we need for that? But this is the second place in which I think is really, really important for civil society organization. I'll just expand it a bit because I know it's a bit, and this is where we have the performance information on what is it that we are supposed to achieve with those programs. And for civil society organization and non-state actors, this is really important because we stop caring too much on just whether it's 2.5 billion shillings. We now care about what is it that the 2.5 billion shillings is supposed to achieve. And that for me is something that is very useful as we answer the question on, how do we know what is allocated? I think the next step that you can add to that question is, how do we know what we are supposed to achieve with what is allocated? An interesting question you asked, Elijah, is around how do we know when the money has moved, and this is another very complicated part of this conversation. Now, every year, national government and county governments are supposed to prepare what we call cash disbursement schedules. A cash disbursement schedule appreciates that the government does not get, if our budget is spread across 12 months, we are not going to get 10 shillings every month. In some months, you'll get 8 shillings. In some months, it will be 12 shillings. In some months, it will be, a different figure altogether. That's one appreciation that is there. The second appreciation is that the implementation of the budget is not uniform. If you are constructing a classroom, the procurement process you go through and the kind of things you need to put in place, including feasibility studies for that, will be very different from when you are digging a borehole. Right? Or when you're building a children protection facility against domestic violence, it's going to be very different. So the cash flow disbursement appreciates that things are done differently as you're implementing the budget. And so if we know that, then we know how much money to release to the different departments for them to implement their programmatic work across the year. Again, that's a cash flow that comes to Parliament for approval. Now, as you know, there is what we have in law and what happens in practice. What happens in practice is a bit more complicated than that. But one of the areas to look at is the reports that James has spoken to from the Office of the Controller of Budget, but also the National Treasury does put out quarterly budget review documents, is you'll be able to get that there is information that is provided on how much money has been released for spending to different departments within a certain quarter. The one from National Treasury is very aggregated. So you might not get too much, especially when you're very focused on a particular program. But the ones from the Office of the Controller of Budget, and their reports are usually on their website, you'll get the breakdown of the sector. And in the last couple of years, they've even gone further to the different ministries and the different programs within the ministries. And you'll find, some columns there named exchequer releases. Exchequer releases just means that money has been released. So that might be one place to be able to get an idea on that. But it's good for us to remember that the same way the budget process has different processes and different actors, the cash flow released to the different departments that are implementing these programs also has different actors in place. I will shamelessly plug in here. So we'll be launching something on the 30th of this month that is actually looking at cash flow as a big challenge to budget implementation at the national level, and a couple of case studies from the counties. And you can see the complexity of who is involved, who plays a role. But for us as civil society organizations, understanding that helps us to target our advocacy a bit better. But I think there is an opportunity for us to get some of that information from especially the Office of the Controller of Budget reports. Thanks, Don.
Okay, so thank you very much, John. So I want you to, there's a concern that has been sent to us here, but I want you to use your experience and the expertise to break down. So there's this question around a sub-county where there are children who require support, and that these children have gone to the office of the sub-county children officer, in some part of the country. And the children are gone there to say, we need support from this department in the sub-county because this is the department for children. Now, the sub-county children officer gives a response that, yes, I hear you need support, but I don't have budget that's been allocated to me in this office. You know, so these children are living very far away from the city. Now, civil society agencies that are making follow-up are likely to go to the Department of Children's Services. In the Department of Children's Services, then there's a director. Then the director then will be able to explain. But should you not be satisfied with that explanation, you're likely to go to the PS. The PS is also likely to explain. But remember, along this journey is a civil society that is walking this journey of asking the right questions. But this child who is in this sub-county is waiting for a response. So what explains why sometimes at the National Treasury website, you can actually see that resources have been allocated to a particular government department. When you go to the program-based budget, like you have rightfully showed us, you can actually see the outputs and the targets. And you can confirm that resources have been allocated for a particular priority area for children. But in the community, the children and their families are saying they cannot feel the sub-county children officers supporting them. And the sub-county children officers, when you visit them, they're saying they have no money. What's your view on that matter? Either John or James.
Well, that's a deep question, and let me try to answer it in two ways. So first of all, I think this highlights one of the biggest problems that we rarely speak about as civil society organizations, which is the fact that even as we run a devolved system of governance that appreciates that decentralization of services is vital to making sure that the priorities of citizens are reflected in budgets, the national level has remained very centralized. Which means that even when the conversations are happening about the priorities and allocations and how then that goes back down the stair to the children in that sub-county, that still people have to troop to Nairobi for that conversation. I think that's just, first of all, to place one of the challenges. At the county level, the conversation is slightly framed a bit differently in this scenario. The second thing is also to think of how budgets actually work, and especially when you're speaking of the different actors that are within the ministry or within the Department of Children. So you have directors of departments, you have the PS, and you have the ministers and the rest. Who is involved at what point? I think one of the things to say at this point is that when you think about the directors and what they push for, a lot of their input, and I'm borrowing this from the Ministry of Health, because that's a place we've had a lot of these conversations, is that once the director hands in their budget requests, their role ends at that point. It's now the PS and the minister who play the bigger role when it comes to how much the sector receives and some of the bigger priorities, or what people sometimes call flagship projects that are being done within the ministry. So that's a big challenge that sometimes explains why officers, sub-county officers, county officers seem as lost as the rest of us who are asking the questions. It's because of how centralized the conversation has become. And I think as we, as civil society, think about our engagement, is we have to make sure that what we are pushing, especially when we're engaging at those higher offices, is how that process gets decentralized. Because if we have to come to the PS to be able to address the challenges of children in Eldama Ravine in Baringo County, then something is wrong with that arrangement. But that's how some of these things play out. The second thing, which I think is important for us to keep in mind here, and sorry, I'll just go back to what I had shared, because this is exactly what I had prepared it for. There's an animal in this country called supplementary budgets. Now, supplementary budgets happen at the national level and they happen at the county level. We once tried to be cheeky and asked the National Treasury how many supplementary budgets can be prepared in a year. And somebody also answered us in a cheeky way and said as many as possible, but we can do up to 6 of them in a year. Now, what does that mean? It means that when you go to the budget that I was speaking about, at the end of June, a budget has been approved, that amount can actually be changed during the period of implementation. And what that does is that sometimes the money that you thought, the money that you saw had been approved for a particular project that's supposed to be benefiting those children in that sub-county could have been moved. And what that means then is if you're not keeping an eye on the supplementary budget, the expectation is that this money is going to come at some point, but it doesn't. And that has become a big issue at the county level, and it has always been an issue at the national level. Now, this example I give here is when COVID hit last year, we had a supplementary budget that was done. And one of the things that the government did is it provided an additional 10 billion shillings that went to social protection programs. And you can see that about 8.6 billion of it came to the National Safety Net program. Others went to the other programs like the Kazi kwa Vijana or Kazi Mtaani that was outside this ministry. But look carefully at some of the areas where cuts were actually made during that COVID-19 period. Child community support services, some cuts happened there. So we need to keep an eye on this, because part of the reason why we expect money to hit the ground is because some of those priorities were defunded or the amounts were reduced, and that can become a big challenge. So those are two ways in which I will respond to that question. But I think those are also to highlight some of the problems that we as civil society should think of focusing on to make sure that problem can start being chipped away.
James, any addition?
Yes, a quick mention to what from John's presentation. You should have seen the 86 million that John has indicating that was cut from child community support service. Now, essentially it means that services worth 86 million were removed. There was supposed to be delivered services equivalent to 86 million. Now you can imagine the amount of resources that would, amount of, how big such a service provision is, to lose 86 million. So that is the way I want us to, don't look at the numbers only. Ask yourself, if 86 million was not spent, what happened? It means services worth 86 million was not delivered. It means if you were doing rehabilitation for children, we did not do. It means if you were doing linkages at home, repatriation, education, we did not do equivalent to 86 million. But there is a rallying call for us to work together. We need to also continuously monitor this to increase the component of budget credibility. We need to challenge. And I know John and his colleagues and ourselves, we've been working on the question around budget credibility, trying to look at the justification on the resources that were allocated. Why were they not allocated or spent as well allocated? That's a question that we are calling upon even today. We are calling the civil society organizations working in the children focused sector to look at, are we pushing for government to justify the reasons why resources dedicated for children are not being spent? Because most of the time they're not being spent as they should have been spent. And that's a why probably you'll find that because budgeting does not start from top there, our budgeting starts from the bottom, where if it's a county department of children's services, they will issue a call for departments to prepare their budgets. Departments will ask the sub-county officers to prepare their budget. Those budgets will be consolidated. It means even the sub-county department prepared a budget. And that budget went up through the chain. But then the money was allocated, but then it has not happened. We need to pick that conversation from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. So let me allow Samuel Rotich. You've been raising your hand. Samuel Rotich, you can raise your comment. Then we have Peter Owiti thereafter. So Samuel Rotich, go ahead. Samuel Rotich, if you can hear me. Okay, thanks. So let's hear Peter Owiti. You have been raising your hand if you want to raise a comment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elijah. My name is Peter Owiti. I'm based in Makueni, and my organization is Water Youth Development Project here in Makueni County. John, you did mention something about disbursement schedule. And I was talking to one of the government officers in one of the departments, and then I say, how is working? Say, our work is slow, there is no money. And we are in September, the 14th. And yet the dismantled schedule had been prepared, I believe. What could have gone wrong? Thank you.
So thank you, Peter. So anyone else who want to ask a question, please raise your hand up. But as John and Peter response, okay, go ahead, Angela Mutunga. Go ahead, Angela.
Hello, Elijah. Thanks so much, John and James, for very insightful discussions here. As an advocate, coach, mentor, this is subject that definitely we as advocates have not managed to crack very well, especially in following the money and understanding how to ensure that our advocacy is top-notch in terms of course corrections that are needed. My question to both of you is, with all these analysis and tons of information and many places where we need to plug in as advocates, if we were to rate 4 things, 2 things that we need to focus on as a collective body of advocates at the national level, and 2 things that we need to focus on as a collective body of advocates at the sub-national level, that is at the county level, what would those 2 things be? Major, hairy, audacious, that help all of us then to kind of begin to open doors to fight the smaller wars, in the context of what is the battle and what is the intermediary battle, architecture that we need to focus on so that we can open the space for now the smaller battles to go on, because we have too many things to be done and we need some guidance on specific to child rights budgeting. What is your best advice? Thanks.
Angela, let's have Bexina Mwindi.
Okay, thank you, James. Thank you, John, and James too, and Joel. Mine is just to ask something. We have been seeing a lot of duplication when it comes to budgeting of children projects and programs in the national government and in the county government. Yes, some of the processes have been developed, others have not been developed. And duplication results to wastage of funds and resources. How are we going when we are implementing all these programs? How are we going to harmonize? Because most of the counties, in most of the counties, there is that disconnect when it comes to budgeting, either from the county government and the national government, and even the civil society. How can we work as civil society and bridge the gap of disconnect and duplication of programs? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bexina. So over to you, James, in about 2 minutes, then John in 2 minutes, then we go towards wrapping up. So over to you, James.
Thank you very much. And asante sana, Angeline and Mwindi for the questions. So for me, what I'll pick with regards to prioritization the focus, it's prioritization and transparency. Because if we got that light, we will not struggle with the rest of the things. And this is where we call, need to call all the civil society actors to be in the conversation. Do not fear being in the conversation. And even reminding government officers who are responsible the consequences of not adhering to the provisions, for example, of the PFM Act. And also those who have the capacity to get into public interest litigation. We have to allow for precedent to take shape in this country with regards to PFM, where we have seen public interest litigation cases succeed, like the case for Kiambu County and the finance bill. We have seen that being adopted and counties taking seriously such issues. So if we're able to address a corrective path, then that would help. And probably I'll ask John later on to check on that. With regards to duplication, as Mwindi has asked, let me say the biggest problem we have with that duplication is that still we have got to be very honest with ourselves as a country. We have not allowed the full devolution to take shape. We still have functions being cringed on at the national level. We should not be there. The moment we allow for full devolution to take shape, children functions at the national level should remain children functions at the national level. We should not hold any resources. It is a policy question. The government should work on the policy question and the implementation of the policy question. The government should not be holding money for implementation of repatriation of children in Nairobi, through agencies. Those agencies should be devolved to the counties at which they are domiciled, and given special grants and awards to be able to take shape and domicile within the county. So what we need to work with collectively as a county and civil society actors is pursue the conversation on full devolution. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, John.
Thanks. So I'll answer Witi's questions very straight. What's wrong with the cash flow and why do people not have money to spend? Two things. Number one is we actually have a revenue problem in this country in some form. And it means that there are times when the schedule says you should send 10 shillings to counties, and there's actually not 10 shillings to send to counties. I know there are many newspapers articles that have been written saying, is Kenya broke, is Kenya broke, is Kenya not broke? But I think that's one of the challenges that has been there even before COVID. Please don't let COVID be an excuse for this. It was there even before COVID. That's one challenge. The second challenge is that these cash flow disbursements are passed by both houses of parliament. The national cash flow one is passed by the National Assembly and the county one is passed by the Senate. The oversight about how this cash flow disbursement is actually implemented and actualized, the oversight there is really non-existent. I think that's the best way to put it. And I think that's one area, now to touch on one of the areas that Angela asked. The role of the oversight institutions in making sure that some of the challenges that we are discussing today start being solved sits with the oversight role that Parliament is supposed to play. And by Parliament here, I mean the National Assembly, the Senate, but also our county assemblies at the subnational level. If there is one thing we can do is to think of how we engage with those oversight institutions, including the intergovernmental ones, like the Controller of Budget and then the Auditor General and the rest, to make sure that oversight is a bit stronger. Because one of the questions, like what Okello is asking in the chat, how is it that it's like priorities just pop out of nowhere and supplementary budgets are required? It's because the oversight is also very weak. When the budget is brought to Parliament, if we don't keep an attention on how credible, how serious, how sound is the fiscal policy upon which that budget has been built, then everything goes wrong from there. So there's something that we can do when it comes to the role of oversight institutions that I think is very, very important. Thank you, Don.
Let me allow Jennifer of Total News just to raise some comments, and then you can allow Jennifer, other participants to raise their questions. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much to John and James for, it's so interesting. I'm in the same room with Don, and I'm thinking, this is going on. So guys, you'd allow us another about 10, 15 minutes max so that we can allow the hands which are up to speak. So as you speak, James and John, what I request for you is please guide us, okay? You already told us that there are 6 supplementary opportunities to go and do supplementary budgets, okay? So how can we ensure to influence that the next supplementary budget increases the budget just for children, especially now with all the issues that are coming up? No, right now, because we already have analyzed the budget. Anybody who has not seen, there's an amazing document that has been done by, I think, Center for Human Rights. It's not Center. I'll share the link on human-centered budgeting. It's an amazing analysis. Now we already know the analysis and how much budget that has been allocated to children. Is there a way, where do we go to start influencing, one, the supplementary budget, and two, because of the changed budgeting cycle, where can we go to start influencing the next budgeting cycle? Because you told us the budgeting cycle, that you cannot influence it when they call for public participation. You start doing it from the planning stage when you're doing the analysis of the previous budget. So where do we go? And then as you're thinking the two of that, I saw Christine, I saw Ben, and there was Robert. I'll assume Ben and Christine, your questions have been answered. If not, please continue lifting up your hand. I will allow you to talk. But for now, Ben's hand is the only one that is up. Ben, for 1 minute, your question, and then Mombi.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Thank you, James. It is a pleasure to touch base again, and John and Bonyo. My observation and question is about the two functions that touch on children or child rights that have been left to the county government. This is the function of health and the function of early childhood development, the ECD. In your views, do you think the county governments are doing commendable job in budgeting for these functions, especially health and early childhood development? Because you find that even in most counties, early childhood development teachers, ECD teachers are not being paid. ECD teachers are still under the parents, and they are really, really suffering. Some counties have not employed them. There are challenges in, constructing ECD centers or classes, because in some constituencies or some counties, the CDF, the Constituency Development Fund, claim that that is a county function. So I don't know, in your views, do you think we are doing well? Our counties are doing a commendable job in budgeting for children in regard to health and early childhood development? Thank you.
Ben, thank you. That's a very good question. And that's something that we keep on seeing. County government, as much as we want to support devolution, there's something about county governments where they think children's stuff has nothing to do with them, so they don't budget. Like, I think the best practice, I think so far, is Bungoma, which has a considerable budget for children, and the former Kisumu government, the former governor for Kisumu was very child focused. But currently, we don't have any counties which are really budgeting for children. So that's a good question. How can we influence county budget to include more children, especially child rights staff? Mombi, 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be in this forum. First of all, I'd like to ask, I work with children of imprisoned mothers. And when I look into the program performance review, as you have directed us for State Department of Correctional Services, I see no mention of any budget allocation for the children accompanying their mothers in prison. And that explains their terrible plight, where they have to, depend on well-wishers, and especially now when there's even a ban on even of the prison visit. So my question is, when they are not acknowledged in, what is there a process to have a child acknowledged in this budgeting? Because we can keep singing every year that there's no budget allocation for them, but they are not in the budget list in the first place. What is the process of raising awareness, not even raising awareness, acknowledging a child that is within, that should be within a space and it is not available there? Because they're acknowledged in law, they know that they're in the prisons. The prisons have a budget allocation, even for ex-offenders, but there is no mention of this child. So what is the process to actually now have a budget item so that now we talk about budgeting for them? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mombi. You've just touched my passion. When you're talking about children, how many times are children included in the budgeting process? Okay, so without having voices of children in the budgeting process, it's very difficult to include them. So John and James, I know you guys are not child-centered, but how can we ensure that when you're talking about public participation, there's also child participation in the budget making process? Thank you so much. Last person, Robinson.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mtoto News. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, James. I'm Robinson Obonga from Plan International. Mine will be brief and specific. I'll kindly request you to kindly connect us with the 10 sectors that you're talking about, so that we can see how we can, influence the issues that we want to influence on those tables. So if you can share with us maybe the contacts, or if you can put us into the mailing lists, because we understand right now that there is a conversation that is ongoing, and in the next 2 weeks, I think it will be over. So if you can share with us their contacts, it will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. James, I know you're running somewhere, so I would let you pick up you answer the questions and probably do your closing remarks before you leave, and then we can be left with John giving us more insights.
Thank you very much. Let me first of all pick up with the question that Ben Omilo raised with regards to whether counties are doing the right thing with regards to budgeting. At the Institute, we've currently been looking at child budgeting and in regards to investments. And we're happy working with the technical support from Bob or Muchabayo of UNICEF. And I saw him. Bob, I think I saw you in this call. And what we've seen literally is that we are not budgeting right. We are not putting the right resources where they need to be. And I think this is it's a good opportunity for advocates to keep this conversation going. However, as advocates, you need to have the right evidence. Most of the time is what we also need to understand as budget advocates or child-focused advocates is that there is nowhere written that child programming is more important than water programming. It is a question of priorities. What are the priorities that we are pursuing? And what then that means is that we need to have our evidence right. We need to walk in with the analysis and say, we've looked at this analysis in Bungoma County, in Homa Bay County, and realized that as a county, you're not investing in the right way. This is the way you need to put your investment, because what's happened is that also constructing classrooms in Kenya, constructing roads, those are the easier options. And of course, we know how corrupt our system is. Those kickbacks, you'll find kickbacks in those places. But when you provide services to children, there are no opportunities for kickbacks. And we need to be very honest with ourselves as a country, because then we can be able to identify the needs. And we know some of these things are genuinely done. Sometimes it's a question of capacity, including probably the people being told to budget, as the children officers do not have that capacity. So we need to fight to ensure that that happens. So I will, on the question on children with prison mothers, it might not be an area that we might be able to delve in deeply into this particular point, but it's a conversation that we can pursue further to see in which budget, in the State Department for Correctional Services, where these children need to be budgeted for, or the Children Department services. But we have to pick up that conversation. And I know I not asked John on the question asked from Plan on connecting with the sectors. So once again, thank you very much for this opportunity to be in this webinar and to share some insights on participating in the budget process and implementation of the budget processes. And we hope that the insights will also be able to propel the advocates to be able to drive the conversation forward. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Asante.
Thank you so much, James. John, you can jump and then plus your closing remarks.
Thanks. So let me speak to a couple of issues that have come up. I think the first one was, how can the organizations in this call keep tabs on when some of these things are happening, whether it's the supplementary budgets or whether it's when the budget estimates and different priorities are being discussed and passed in Parliament. I think I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, is about keeping an eye on every step of the process. And one of the things that I will share with Elijah after this is actually the budget calendar itself and the dates that it has, because those dates are fixed in law. So my big persuasion to all of you will be, have someone or a couple of persons in your organizations who keep an eye on those particular dates, checking the National Treasury website to see whether the budget has been uploaded there, keeping an eye on by this date, we are supposed to get an implementation report, checking and making sure it's there. If it's there, looking in and seeing whether the priorities that might be of interest to us are actually being implemented as expected. So that for me will be the first urge on how to deal with this, because if you have someone or a couple of people in your organization that are paying attention to what is happening in the budgeting space, then you have a better chance of not missing any of these conversations. But secondly, I understand that there is definitely a network of organizations working around children's rights. And I think there's an opportunity there to make use of that network that you have. as a way to communicate when there are some of these processes that are taking place, pinging each other and reminding each other that, at this point, we should try and collect our views on what we think our priorities should be, and making sure that you are engaging with the right decisions at the right time and with the right actors. Number three, for us, and for us here, I mean for us at IBP, but also together with IPF, we do bring together organizations that are interested in working around budgets. Some of the people I see in this call are participants in those conversations. And it will be good to have the network of organizations working around children being part of those convenings that we do. A key part of what we do in those conversations is to help dig through the budget document, think through the different ways you can analyze the budget. Then you are the sector experts. You have the information, you have the evidence on what is happening within the children's space, and connecting that with the budget then could become one area where we collaborate closely. Number two, a topic that James has touched on, so I won't belabor this too much, is whether we are funding children issues adequately. Now, I want to turn a bit philosophical on this one. One of the things that we do in this country every year is we do a budget every year. The reason why we do a budget every year is because there's an anticipation that priorities also change. And those priorities might cost differently, depending on what the priorities are. Are they development in nature? Are they recurrent in nature? Is it about personnel? So it's a more permanent cost. And I think that's the exact reason why you want to engage with the budget every year and with every decision. Because budgets are political documents. They are about priorities. We are discussing about children's rights today, and probably the guys in infrastructure, or guys in agriculture, or guys in administration and security are meeting somewhere else, having the very same conversation we are having today. So what that means is that we have to be there when the decisions are being made about how much money is going to go to different sectors and to different priorities. There's a common saying we have within the budget space that decisions are made by those who turn up. In the budgeting space, that statement is really one that we should keep in mind. Then lastly, I think Robinson's point, when it comes to the sectors. So first of all, the composition of the sectors is actually made up of the departments that you guys already engage with. So for example, if it's the children one, it is within one of those sectors. So the sectors are actually just made up of the different ministries that work on things that are related to that sector. So for example, if it's agriculture, it will have the State Department for Livestock, the State Department for Fisheries within that. So if you guys already have contacts with the Department of Children Affairs, you already have contacts to the people who sit in the sector working groups. But we are on our side, and this is something I should say now, we are trying to put together some discussions that we can try and influence those sector working groups before October comes here. And once we get all the contacts of the current chairs of the different sectors, we'll be happy to share it with Dawn, who then can share it with the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John and James. These are the webinars that you attend and you feel as if you've gone to a uni, to university, and you can add them into your CV and LinkedIn that you have done this particular course. So I'm going to invite back Dawn to come and wrap up, but we have seen so much interest. We can see the charts it's been beeping. So we will send you an email asking you if you guys are interested for another session, and probably you're going to get some other speakers. Bob was in this call earlier. We saw some other child budgeting experts in the call. So we may try to get some child experts to come in and just have this conversation again. Don?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And thank you, John Kinuthia and James Muraguri, for your expert discussion with us. Let me take this opportunity to thank you, all of us who managed to join this call. This is just a beginning of a series of webinars around budgeting for children in Kenya. We want to ensure that we take advantage of the opportunity that has been given to us by international budget partnerships and the Institute of Public Finance of Kenya to provide technical assistance to civil society organizations that are involved in advancing children's rights. So we thank you very much for joining. This has been recorded. We have all your emails. We'll be able to share the recording with you so that you can listen to it again. Secondly, we'll be asking you through email to share with us the topics of your interest so that we can cover them in the next series we're going to have on the webinar. Thank you very much, and our discussion has come to a close. Thank you and have a good evening. Thank you.